certainly, as I mentioned in an email, join many of the Shade Tree members who worked with Vince over the years in saying, we will miss him as a friend and a volunteer, but his dedication to the Shade Trees of Madison will continue to grow. And then William Francis DeLuca, lifelong Madison resident, died on January 27th at the age of 98. Born in 1924 on Community Place right here in Madison, first son of Italian immigrant parents, the late Anthony and Rose DeLuca. He had a sister Antoinette and a younger brother Philip, who died at age 12. Graduated Madison High School, earned his law degree and MBA, and after graduating high school, he served our country by joining the United States Marine Corps, serving in World War II, another member of the greatest generation. He was sent to the South Pacific, where he endured the Battle of Iwo Jima, taking part in the Marine invasion on the first day of the battle of the island on February 19, 1945, and he was present for the entire 5-week battle. Returned from war, met his bride, Viola, married and settled in Madison, and welcomed 7 children. His career spanned 60 years in finance, and all this whole time lived in Madison. He was predeceased by his wife, survived by 3 sons, William, Philip, and Anthony, 4 daughters, Rose, Christina, Viola, and Adriana, and their respective spouses, 14 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. And lastly, Edwin Farley Moran, Jr., Madison, passed on the 25th of January, age 86. Born in New York City in 36. He received his Bachelor of Arts from Holy Cross. He was Navy ROTC cadet in college, served his country in North Atlantic. He's survived by his wife of 62 years, Barbara, his 5 children and their families, Tracy, Mimi, Michael, Amy, and Katie, and 7 grandchildren. He spent his entire professional life in New York City as a career bond salesman. In retirement, he spent most of his time outside biking, golfing, and cross-country skiing on the trails of New Hampshire and Vermont. He was a dedicated community member, volunteering at Eva's Kitchen and serving Madison on the Madison Public Library Board of Trustees, and also Madison Public Library, Inc., they're the nonprofit wing that supports the library. So let's take a moment to remember Vince Licari, Bill DeLuca, and Farley Moran, and let us pass our thoughts on to the families and friends they leave behind. Thank you. We have a motion for the reorganization minutes of January 6, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, a motion for the executive minutes of January 23rd, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion for the regular minutes of January 23, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome all. Here we are, having eaten too many wings and doing our share to consume guacamole we might have made from our overripe avocados that were on sale last week. And we survived the Super Bowl, and congratulations to the Kansas City fans out there. And just to touch on something from 3 weeks ago, and for those that were here in this room and watch the meeting online, you know we had a very interesting meeting, and with speakers not necessarily showing respect for people in the audience, and I strive to deliver the most positive and supportive meetings in council chambers across the state, and I think I fell short of that. So I just appreciate the feedback that I received from residents through emails or several I met on the street. And we have looked at how we handled that situation, and we'll make some changes to make sure we continue to set the tone for Madison being the best. That was the last meeting with the original Lincoln portrait in the room. That is the replica, the reproduction in the back of the room, and so it was an interesting meeting to send Abraham Lincoln off to Washington, D.C. with. So prior to our first comment period, I will be asking our attorney, Marina, to review some of the guidelines that are outlined in the Open Public Meetings Act, so people who come up to speak can understand what the guidelines are. And there is also some, and I just talked to Mr. Grimes, and he appreciated some of the steps we've taken to improve our accessibility, and we will continue to work on that. I certainly, as he talked, and as he brought up before, until you spend a day of a life in someone that in a wheelchair or any other barriers, you really don't understand what they go through. So this is a grand building. The doors are very heavy, and there's other things that create challenges, and so we have making that a top priority. It's like many lead items during the pandemic and after the pandemic, delays in getting things repaired. So the door assist hopefully will be working in the coming weeks. We did put a bell at the door there so people can ring for assistance if needed. And we will continue to, as residents and others, with suggestions to work to make this a very welcoming chamber and a very welcoming community. And I did already mention our Lincoln portrait. Some of you may have walked in here saying, I guess the portrait didn't leave, because it is an incredible reproduction that the trustees had done for us. And this past Friday, Madison was well represented in the National Portrait Gallery as our Lincoln portrait was unveiled. Joining me from the council was Council President John Hoover, council members Rachel Ehrlich, Eric Range. Jim Burnett also was able to represent Madison. And of course, at the ribbon cutting, there were many members of the Hartley Dodge Memorial Board of Trustees. As you may know, the artwork was given to the trustees by Geraldine Dodge so that it could be enjoyed by the residents of Madison. She had that portrait that belonged to her brother Percy hanging in her estate, and felt that it would be far better to be hanging in Hartley Dodge. It is now in the National Portrait Gallery on loan from the trustees for the next 5 years. So instead of a few hundred people seeing this magnificent Travers Lincoln portrait, it will be seen by millions each year. And if you are in Washington, D.C. over the next 5 years, make it a point to stop in the gallery. As you walk into the president's wing of the gallery, you'll be greeted by the famous Lansdowne painting of George Washington. And then, as you walk around it, you'll see Madison's Lincoln portrait. Two incredible life-size portraits of our greatest presidents. And for those of us that were in the gallery, there's none of the portraits even come close to these two portraits. And again, we appreciate the trustees having this digital reproduction and replica frame put together so we can still enjoy and still have Abraham Lincoln looking over us. And while we were down there, we were able to meet with the staff in Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill's office to discuss issues facing Madison in the coming years. And then on Groundhog Day, I was in Trenton for the annual New Jersey Conference of Mayors and Winter Summit. And this was the first one they had in the beginning of the pandemic. It was an opportunity to hear directly from our state legislators on hot topics. And one of the ones I brought up, which I said was appropriate for Groundhog Day, is addressing affordable housing. And so hopefully we will see some action. They said they recognize that it must leave the courts, it must be done legislatively, and there needs to be a solution, and they recognize we have a looming deadline. So hopefully that will happen. There was also quite a bit of conversation around the state health plan, which Madison is leaving. And the Conference of Mayors is a statewide conference, and I currently serve as the second vice president. So I will continue to work on those issues. And our employee for the month of February is School Resource Officer Tom Downs. Tom has worked in Madison High School for the last 5 years and has become invaluable as liaison between the school district and police patrol division. His ability to develop lasting relationships with students and faculty was instrumental in solving recent burglary and criminal mischief incident in the borough. Tom has also excelled in identifying and implementing new security measures at the high school to provide a safer environment for everyone. So we appreciate Tom's dedication to working with the students in the school district. And not included in his recognition is he also can play bagpipes very well. And now I'm going to come down and present a proclamation. Kenesha, please come forward. So this is February, and which is Black History Month, a very important month to recognize. And Kenesha is part of the team that led the effort on Hidden Figures to make sure that people understood the great history in African Americans in Madison. So whereas each February, Black History Month celebrates the contributions of African Americans have made to American history in their struggles for freedom and equality, and deepens our understanding of our nation's history. And whereas every February since 1926, African American history has been celebrated in America. That year, historian Dr. Carter Woodson, who dedicated his life to educating African Americans about the achievements and contributions of their ancestors, created Negro History Week. He chose February because the month contained the birthdays of both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two prominent men whose historic achievements African Americans already celebrated. And whereas in 1976, President Ford expanded his commemoration of Black history in the United States to Black History Month by saying the celebration enabled people to seize the opportunity to honor the all too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every endeavor throughout our history. And whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, and spiritual and political development. And whereas these accomplishments are more remarkable for having been won at the cost of great struggle and sacrifice by men and women who came to these shores in chains, and by their descendants. And whereas it's time to also reflect on the centuries of oppression, including slavery, which was not limited to the southern states, but here in New Jersey and throughout the North. And whereas this year's Black History Month theme is Black Resistance, and now explores how African Americans have resisted historic and ongoing oppression in all forms. Whereas in his last proclamation honoring Black History Month, former President Barack Obama proclaimed, "Every American can draw strength from the story of hard-won progress, which not only defines the African American experience, but also lies in the heart of our nation as a whole." Now, therefore, I, Robert H. Conley, Mayor of Borough, Madison, on behalf of the governing body, hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month, and ask all to remember the impact African Americans have had on our country, while also commit to a racially just future.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Borough Council members, members of the public, and fellow community members. I'm honored to be here tonight to accept the Black History Month proclamation this year, as it brings recognition and awareness to the need of all Americans to learn and celebrate the contributions of people of color to our nation, especially Black Americans who have consistently contributed fiscally, culturally, innovatively to our nation since its formation. I hope the mayor's reading of the proclamation will be a call for all its hearers to dedicate themselves to learning something new about the rich, complicated, painful, resilient, and victorious part of American history from a diverse perspective. I adopted this very cause in the summer of 2020 when Mayor and Council Member Deb Cohen hosted the first Community Conversations meeting. Since then, I've become the co-founder of Hidden Figures of Madison, New Jersey, whose vision is to preserve the history of the underrepresented people of color that contributed to Madison, New Jersey. Though I have dedicated myself to this cause, I hope to see a day when American history is no longer segregated into Black history, Asian American history, or the likes, but one where we can view and teach history in its most authentic form. Doing so is essential to preserving American history and our nation. History causes us to celebrate triumphs, ponder where we failed, and urge us to progress. I have become familiar with the Hebrew word Selah after studying the Bible. Some say that it means to pause and reflect. I hope that all who are within the sound of my voice and listen to Mayor Conley's reading of the Black History Month proclamation will commit themselves to pause and reflect on the histories of our country during February and onward. God's blessings to all.
right, we now go to reports from committees. Community Affairs, Council President Hoover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Downtown Development Commission and Business Development Manager. Downtown Development Commission will hold its next meeting on Thursday, February 16th, in the meeting room next door at 7:15. Everybody is invited to attend. The DDC Standing Committee will be meeting over the next 2 weeks to establish goals for 2023. The 4 committees are assigned a facade, marketing and economic development, public improvement, and arts and events. Plans are underway to reimagine May Day for 2023 and into the future. The plans include a name change as well. The plan will be finalized before the council meeting on February 27th and announced. From the Chamber of Commerce, there are many, many items that the Chamber of Commerce is involved in. I'm only going to mention 2 here. The Madison Area Chamber of Commerce invites families to participate in a new scavenger hunt in the business district. The Hearts and Roses scavenger hunt begins Friday, February 10th, and will continue through Friday, March 10th. This is a free month-long fun family activity. Pick up a participation card at the Madison Pharmacy, the Pink Pear, or Sugar Rush. The 2023 Taste of Madison is scheduled for Monday, April 24th at the Brook Lake Country Club. Tickets are available for purchase at Gary's Wine Marketplace or garyswine.com. This benefits the chamber, the Madison
DDC and...
Rotary?
EDC and
Rotary.
yeah, and the Rotary Club. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. The Madison Community Arts Center. The Madison Community Arts Center is gearing up for the 2023 calendar. There are only 35 days when there are no scheduled events. 35 days for the rest of the year. Over the holidays, a movie screen was installed, and plans are being made to set up a family film series and a foreign film series. Currently on the walls at the center are paintings from Maria Lupo, which will be on display through February 26th. This will be followed by a show entitled Don't Close Your Eyes, Ukrainian Artists Respond to the War, a series of drawings and paintings by artists living in the Ukraine. Other events will be planned around the show. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Public Works Engineering and Finance and Borough Clerk is our...
Thank you, Mayor. From the Finance Department, we report that the council has already had multiple financial presentations over the last few months. Tonight, we'll jump into the process in earnest. This evening, we'll get our first look at a draft municipal budget developed by the Borough Administration. As you'll see, there are a number of challenges that the borough is facing, including continued revenue shortfalls, increasing expenses, and concerns about tax appeals from commercial properties in town. Voting on the budget is one of the most important actions that the council takes. We work hard as a governing body to be transparent and to make information available to the residents. Tonight we'll have the second of 6 scheduled budget presentations. As a look back, on January 23rd, we discussed the water and electric utilities, and on February 27th, we will meet with department heads. Then on March 13th, we will discuss the municipal budget once more and review the strategic planning guidelines. On March 27th, we will have one final discussion on the budget, along with the introduction of the official state budget document. As per state statute, we will take a 4-week break so that all residents have the opportunity to review the budget document, and then on April 24th, we're scheduled to have a hearing and vote to adopt the budget. As a reminder, all budget information is available on the annual budget process page on Rosenet. In other financial news, the borough has 2 major payments going out this Wednesday. First is a monthly payment to the Board of Education. This month, the payment is $3,706,395.42. And the second major payment is an interest payment of $34,615 for the MRC debt. This payment is paid for out of the Open Space, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund. And lastly, congratulations to Sarah Rafter Murphy of the Finance Department for passing her Tax Collectors 3 course at Rutgers University. She got a grade of 104 on the final exam. She answered the extra credit question correctly, too. Sarah has completed all 3 required courses and expects to sit for the tax collector's exam this June. The Borough supports lifelong learning and encourages staff to cross-train in other departments whenever possible. Okay, switching gears for engineering. There will be, we had a bid opening for the trail construction at Memorial Park. This leads to a recommendation to retain a contractor for this work, and that's listed as part of tonight's agenda. And then separately for the Memorial Park footbridge repairs, which are being done on an expedited basis, demolition work and reconstruction will begin this month. For the MRC basketball and pickleball court, review of the project plans are underway by stakeholders, and that's in anticipation of advertising for bid later this month. For the Cook Avenue parking lot reconstruction, review of the project plans is underway. Colorized renderings are being prepared for a meeting with adjoining business and property owners, which is targeted for early next month. For the Dodge Playground, revised plans and estimates have been received. Cooperative pre-bid contracts have been recommended for award upon approval of the capital funding ordinance, which will be introduced tonight. For Waverly Place redesign and construction, color renderings and prospective views and stakeholder meetings are anticipated within the month. And for the MRC solar carport project, bid documents for construction are being prepared by Talva Energy with review of documents anticipated by the end of this month. It's exciting, frankly, to think of all these great projects that are getting underway this year. Hats off to Bob Vogel for keeping all of these wheels turning. The DPW reports that with the absence of snow, they have spent time rehabbing the old field house, bathroom, and storage area at Dodge Field. The Parks Department took the lead in gutting the building and re-sheetrocking and removing the leaking skylights, scraping and painting and reinstalling the partitions. They're making good progress, and the work will all be done ahead of the farmers market this spring. Christmas tree pickup is all done, and pothole repair is underway, and we just had one salting event recently for icy roads. Lastly, DPW reminds residents if they would like to report a pothole, please use the See Click Fix app, which can be found, can be downloaded, or you can use the web browser interface on rosenet.org. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Landrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Water Department, the Water Department responded to a call of a motor vehicle versus fire hydrant at the corner of Main and Rosedale. The hydrant was of the safety breakaway type, which causes less damage to the vehicle and the fire hydrant. The hydrant was repaired with a standard breakaway kit and was back in service within hours of the accident. Secondly, the curb box valve at 42 Lorraine was excavated and repaired to allow the department to shut off the water at the curb. Contractors were then able to perform the necessary plumbing repairs within the residence. From the Electric Department, the Electric Department standby crews responded to the following 3 after-hour calls: wire down across Rosewood Drive, James Park Substation transformer malfunction alarm, an emergency mark out at Glendale Road and Fairview Road to locate and repair a gas leak. And finally, for the past 2 weeks, the department has been working at the intersection of Ridgedale and Cook Avenue, replacing poles and transferring equipment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Safety, Mr. Range.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Police Department, the Madison Police personnel have met with Madison Public Schools faculty and staff for their ongoing security meetings. These meetings include Police Department command staff and school administration to discuss improvements on school security. The meeting held this past week at Madison High School included discussing a New Jersey state grant that was awarded to Madison Public Schools to implement a school mapping system district-wide to assist public safety personnel when responding to a school for an emergency and easily identifying interior rooms and hallways. Also, during the past 2 weeks, the Madison Police Department Community Relations Unit has held several tours of the police headquarters for various Girl Scout troops. The tours consisted of girls between 3rd and 6th grades, along with their den mothers. The tours included the interior of the police department and all vehicles and apparatus. To request a tour, please call Corporal Stephanie Aquino of our Community Relations Unit at 973-593-3034. And from the fire department, our ladder truck is back in service after undergoing some repairs. And later today, we'll be voting on a resolution setting the date of June 10th for our wet down for the new fire truck that we took possession of last fall. So we're looking forward to that. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Health, Mr. Harlan Putis.
We have from our last meeting, we held Monday of last week. Oh, that would help. I mean, they can hear me. All right. We're conducting an animal census in the borough. The Health Department is planning to conduct an animal census in Madison this summer. The department will utilize paid student interns to conduct this door-to-door census and will work with the borough on public outreach. Vaccinations and communicable diseases. The department nursing staff continue to fill requests, including for homebound individuals, for COVID-19 and influenza vaccines. They're also working with individuals qualifying for the vaccine for children and 317 adult vaccine programs to accommodate them at the Madison or Bloomfield clinics. The department is also conducting a pilot project to expand clinic hours in the first half of 2023 to include early evening and weekend hours for these clients. Nursing staff and the department local health outreach coordinator are working to improve COVID-19 bivalent booster coverage among long-term care facility residents. Communicable disease team staff continue to investigate typical cases of reportable diseases and assist the Madison District schools and daycare facilities with outbreaks. There is a small ongoing COVID-19 outbreak at a long-term care facility in Madison. The staff are currently conducting immunization audits to verify the vaccine status of school-aged children as per New Jersey law. Other health initiatives, free blood pressure screenings, open promoted to all borough employees and the general public, are available in the health department clinic in Hartley Dodge on the last Friday of the month from 10 a.m. to 11:30. No appointments required. Our health education division is also collaborating with Atlantic Health to provide heart health sessions at Rexford, Tucker in February. COVID-19 updates. The number of newly reported cases continues to drop. We also know that these figures are impacted by the popularity of home tests, which are not reported to public health authorities. The health department is currently distributing free home antigen test kits to community partners, schools, daycare centers, and senior groups. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
It's a lot.
Now we move on to communications and petitions.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor and council received an email dated January the 24th from Daniel Lamagna of Niles Avenue. He wrote that he was ashamed and discouraged, embarrassed about the meeting that we had on the council meeting of January the 23rd. An email dated January the 26th from Tricia Coyle of Stafford Drive expressing appreciation for all that the mayor and council do for the borough. An email dated January the 26th from Bridget Daly of Keep Street supporting the Climate Action Committee and encouraging the borough to purchase electric vehicles for the borough's fleet, to replace the borough's fleet. An email dated February the 9th from Ann Marchione of the Caldwell Environmental Commission thanking the mayor and council for their efforts to save the Drew Forest.
We also received a whole stack of Valentine greetings that came through the Friends of the Drew Forest. I will not read each of them now, but we will...
42 in this.
There's 42 of them, and so for those that sent them and took the time, we thank you very much. It's on the front side on all of them, it says, "Thank you. I think you're tremendous." And with our trust, some two great Drew Forest trees right there, so thank you for all those. Which reminds me I better get my Valentine card. And now we will move on to the first of two invitations for public comment. This one is limited to items that are on our agenda discussion, also resolutions that are part of the consent agenda. I'm going to go through those items, and then I'm going to ask Marina Steinle, our attorney, to, as I mentioned before, go through the guidelines as through the Open Public Meetings Act. So the items that you can comment in this period, and there will be another comment period when you may comment on any other topic, but these are our agenda discussions, are the 2023 climate action recommendations, and then the budget hearing, the draft budget discussion, and fund balance. And these are the resolutions you may comment on. Resolution 63 is adopting climate goals for 2023. You're going to hear about those shortly. The Resolution 64 is professional services contract to Akari Oving Architects for interior renovation, Madison Public Library, not to exceed $210,000. This is funded through Ordinance 4-2022 or any other source that may be deemed appropriate. Resolution 65 is a contract to TTI Environmental of Moorestown, New Jersey, in the amount of $30,950 for library interior renovation abatement project, and this is also funded through Ordinance 44-2022, not to exceed $30,950. Resolution 66 is awarding a contract for the purchase of a transformers, and this is going to United Standard Electric, not to exceed $117,335 and funded through Ordinance 31-2020. Resolution 67-2023 is authorizing submission of grant application to the County of Morris for a community development block grant for relocation and transformer at 15 Theory Avenue. That's the senior of housing there, and this is the amount of $150,000. Resolution 68, authorizing purchase of a Ford F-450 dump truck and accessories for the Public Works Department through New Jersey Cooperative Pricing System, and this is not to exceed $83,000. Resolution 69 is shared service agreement with Borough of Chatham and City of Summit to provide technology services, so we are the provider. Resolution 70 is use of competitive contracting for the procurement of purchasing power agreement for the Madison-Chatham joint meeting. Resolution 71 is a grant agreement between Madison and New Jersey DEP, and this is for the Pays to Plug New Jersey Electric Vehicle Charging Grant Program of up to $200,000. Resolution 72 is amending Resolution 61-2023, awarding a contract to Nielsen Ford for a purchase of 2 hybrid police vehicles and accessory equipment under the Educational Services Commission of NJESC, and not to exceed $91,709. And this was an additional $9,995. Resolution 73 is support of liquor license reform in the state of New Jersey, and the governor has proposed some true reform that would have to work through the legislature, but basically this is the Borough of Madison that supports meaningful liquor license reform legislation to create a more balanced liquor license market. Resolution 74 is authorizing the fire department wet down event that we've already heard about, June 10th. Resolution 75 is license for the Madison High School PTSO. Resolution 76 is St. Vincent raffle license. Resolution 77 is Madison High School PTSO license. And Resolution 78 through 83 are all related to Co-op Pricing Council. First one is Morris County Co-op. Next one, 79, is Union County Co-op. 80 is Educational Services Commission. 81 is Cooperative Purchasing Alliance. 82 is the Somerset County Co-op. 83 is various state cooperative pricing council. And then 84 is, shifting gears almost early, is authorizing the Madison Environmental Commission EV Expo to be held on Kings Road on Wednesday, April 19th. Resolution 85 is authorizing the purchase of 2023 accessible playground equipment from Ben Schaefer Recreation of Lake Hopatcong, and this is in the amount of not to exceed $470,754.16. And that's through ordinance, which one of the funding ordinances, sorry. And then Resolution 86 is authorizing St. Baldrick's Children's Cancer Event on Waverly Place on Sunday, February 26th. So you may comment on any of those resolutions or the 2 agenda discussion items. And again, as a reminder, Please hold comments on any other topics until later. Again, right now, before anyone steps forward, I'll ask Marina to go through the guidelines.
Thank you, Mayor. So pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4-12, the governing body holds public meetings that are open to the public at all times with limited exceptions. However, the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, and regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And this includes requiring speakers to provide their name, address, or municipality of residence, refrain from unreasonably loud, coarse, abusive, or vulgar language, directing their comments directly to the mayor and council and not to the audience, limiting the time length of comments to 3 minutes with a 1-minute grace period, requiring persons to speak only once for each comment period. There are multiple comment periods at the meeting. Allowing individuals the right to comment regardless of your residency, and permitting video recording and any comments that are not disruptive. Anyone who is disruptive will be asked to leave, and if you refuse to leave, the borough will ask the police to assist escort you out. So those are the same rules and requirements we've been having for all of our meetings. Just stating them for the record.
Thank you very much, and not that we anticipate anything, but it was a good time to refresh everyone's memory. So anyone wishing to comment on the 2 agenda discussions or any of the resolutions, you may step forward now, state your name and address and the agenda item you're commenting on. Again, if you want to comment other topics, that will be coming up shortly.
I'm Bruce Esrig in Bedford Court, Madison, and I'd like to comment on the climate change initiative. As in the last meeting, I believe the climate change initiative is an important one. I thought I would comment in this meeting that in order to build support for a climate change initiative, it's important to have personal experience with addressing the issue. So we've done so in a small way. We have car that we can plug in, and it gives us exposure to the issues, like the interest that one might have in driving shorter distances or finding ways to ensure that you have some kind of alternate fuel. It becomes a pragmatic issue. You drive somewhere, you go to dinner, you look for a chance to charge before you come back. So I think that it will help this initiative if people find little things that are relevant to them that they do that contribute. I also comment that when there's discussion in public of electric vehicles, for example, people might think that it doesn't apply to them or they might have some resistance. But our town is full of Amazon delivery trucks, and they are increasingly frequently operating on electricity. This is a good match for them because they make lots of stops, and if they idle, they don't have to run the engine. So they are quiet, and they don't emit local pollution. So this is highly advantageous.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Chris DeVivo, Madison, Greenwood Avenue. I'm here today. I want to thank the committee for all their hard work on the climate action. It was well thought out. But I'm here today to ask you guys to hold off on it and have some more debate. There's a lot of things in there that are really not explained very well. Like, what does increased resiliency mean in the context of the climate action? What does strengthen our community mean in that context as well? What measurements will we use to determine what milestones we meet? Who makes the the choices as to what monies are spent to meet these goals that we have. The other point too about EVs is that, while I'm not opposed to them, I think they're great, but right now all we're doing is taking the pollution that is maybe coming out of the tailpipe of a internal combustion engine and shifting it to another area of the globe. And as we know from the balloon coming this way, whatever goes high enough, it's going to come this way anyway. So all we're doing is shifting around the pollution. So I think we need to look at some other technologies. I read a report where it said that about 40 barrels of oil it takes to make an EV battery, and they only hold about 1 barrel worth of oil in energy. It doesn't seem like a great trade-off. Plus, we have to charge them locally, and if you're using clean sources, right now we don't have that much clean sources available. So we're using coal and we're using natural gas, which is better than coal, and some nuclear. But New Jersey, as you know, is closing some of its nuclear facilities. So I don't know where we're going to get cleaner energy, because they're certainly getting rid of the sources. And a Department of Energy report says that solar and wind is unreliable. So I think we need to put a little more debate into this, at least to discover what some of these things mean in the context of the Climate Action Committee, so that we have a better understanding of what this may cost, and what you're going to require the residents of the borough to do. So I hope you would give that some thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Hi, my name is Yana Kineswick. I live at 28 Bedford Court in Madison Commons. I was very pleased and supportive of the report that the Climate Change Committee presented, that Rachel Ehrlich presented last time. And I again want to voice my support. I think that Madison is a town which punches well above its weight in terms of the impact it has on local communities, in terms of what example, in some sense, it sets for New Jersey and maybe for places beyond New Jersey, because we're voted frequently one of the best towns to live in. We are a university town, we have an art center and so on, so we have visibility, and we attract people from far beyond just our local area. And so I think that what we do and is something that people notice, is something that influences people over and above the actual practical impact that it has here, the 16,000 people that live in this town. So I am very excited about it, and frankly proud to live in such a town, and grateful to live in such a town, and I hope that we continue to support and develop this kind of positioning ourselves as a leader, because we have been very fortunate to have inherited such a wonderful town. This, every time I come into this building, I'm impressed by how uplifting it is to be here. Every time I walk through the tree-lined streets, I'm uplifted, and I think that we need to do our part so that as much as possible we express gratitude for what we were given by investing in the future that hopefully will go way beyond us. So thank you very much, and just wanted to voice my support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And anyone else wishing to comment?
Suzanne Schreiber, Greenwich Court, Madison. Just some of the concerns that I've had over the months in listening to the various climate action updates. and some of them come directly from the last council meeting. You know, there's some very aggressive plans. I think the number given was to move the current number of EVs from 300 to 1,200 by 2025. And we don't know in this country what the, insurance is, what the concern about fires, the whole battery, taking it from mining, which I read one of the figures of 100 pounds have to be moved in order to process every pound of battery. So all of the things that tell us it's still immature industries, how aggressive do we want to be in fairness to, what people can afford and what knowledge we have. Also the concern of solar panels, electric heat pumps that are a big push. They're not as effective in the Northeast. The backup for an electric heat pump is natural gas. Just the cooking, the appliances, the use of natural gas. What are we doing to our restaurants if we start taking that option out? One of the things that Jim Burnett told us last council meeting was he warned us that if 3 EVs in the same neighborhood plug in at once, it could be a problem. That's a problem. Another thing that was talked about by Mr. Burnett was the 2025 electrical contracts possibly being double of what Madison's current electric contracts are. That's a concern. We don't have enough information for that. And in order for the town to grow, survive, the state, the country, we need affordable energy. So I just, like Chris, I ask that you take a look at it, slow the process down a little bit, and let the industries and the energies catch up to where you guys want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Clark. I live in Lake Apacong on Florida Ave. I'm coming up to express my gratitude for Madison's leadership in the Climate Action Plan and recommendations. Having read a number of New Jersey's reports about what we're facing with climate change, when they talk about a potential $1.6 billion annual cost to deal with severe storms by 2030, when they talk about 1.1 feet of sea level rise by 2030 and 2.1 by 2050, when we're learning that 13% of asthma cases could be caused by gas stoves and houses, when we're learning about these various threats that we face, that methane is the second biggest contributor to climate change, and New Jersey is still installing natural gas projects all over the place, including a compressor station we're busy fighting in West Milford. What's certain about the transition to clean energy is that if we don't act, we kick the can down the road to our children, who will face more high ozone days, dirtier air and water, foodborne and waterborne diseases, scarcity of food, a drop in the nutrition of food, and other such issues, places being priced out of being insured, rainy day flooding along our coastline. New Jersey, with 126 miles of coastline, is uniquely vulnerable to climate change, and we are just coming out of the warmest winter on record since 1895. If we don't do something now, we are squandering the opportunity to try to stay within 1.5 degrees. We are already, by some scientists' estimation, past that point, and lucky if we can make it to 2 degrees of warming. And so I deeply appreciate the town's sense of urgency. I realize that change can sometimes be uncomfortable, that change can force us to reconsider our habits or things that we do. I know there are people who prefer cooking on gas stoves, but if you knew it was poisoning your children, would you feel the same way? We are in a position where we need people to be bold and to extend leadership and to think of ideas that can protect public health and protect the land and water as we know it. And so I'm very grateful for Madison's leadership, and I hope very much that towns will imitate and follow suit. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. I'm Chair of the Environmental Commission, so obviously I likely think that the Climate Action Plan is really excellent. But I would like to say briefly that I really admire the council's approach to it because it's so fiscally responsible. It's embedded in the budget process. It's not about spending more money. It's about being smart. It's about how do you plan to save energy down the line, what kind of expenses are going to come up, how does the DPW get solar on it? If it does need that, don't you have to fix the windows? Don't you have to insulate this? It's a way of thinking about the future and planning. It's not about legislating anything for private citizens because a municipality like Madison can't do that. So I also want to just say I personally experienced the methane leak on Fairwood Road where PSE&G was out drilling from like 7 p.m. until midnight, and it was a really smelly leak, and it was pretty scary, and my house was vibrating, and fossil fuel gas infrastructure leaks all the time everywhere. Massachusetts maps leaks, and their map of leaks looks like a map of McDonald's. It's just it's challenging infrastructure, and I had a home energy audit, and they found 4 methane leaks in my basement. So I just think that thinking responsibly about like the best ways we can plan for the future is something the council is doing, and I really applaud them for their fiscal responsibility.
Thank you, Claire.
Hi, I'm Chris Shore, and I live at 31 Shady Lawn Drive, and I have 2 levels of response, both of them very positive for this plan. I think one of the words that should be in the forefront of what we're talking about all the time is plans. This is not something that anybody involved in the planning is leaping into without due care and much research. So as a retired teacher, one of the things that's a side effect that I really admire is in your efforts to have dialogue and to have transparency and to make it clear what you're doing. I can hear in every response that people are doing their own research and finding information pertaining to climate change, which none of us would have even been looking at. So you are bringing it to a level of public engagement and attention that has been probably something we needed to start, like everything else, 15 years ago. So I'm really grateful for the style of the approach, which is not just fiscally responsible, but has focused all the time on what I think has been a very helpful sort of use what you have, start where you are, and do what you can. So I see this plan as having assessed where we are, what we can do, and then using that as a way to plot a forward motion that doesn't just wait for somebody else to make the better change, somebody else to make a perfect project that we could all go whoopee and jump on. These minuscule incremental steps that individuals and towns take are the way we're going to get where we need to be. On the second level, speaking as a Friends of Madison Shade Tree Chair, one of the elements of a safer, healthier, better future really is the preservation of the canopy. And even though we have a tree ordinance, people should be aware that if they plant trees and grow trees, and especially if they preserve the large trees that exist, that's the biggest, best, most successful carbon sequestration we have. That's the best water filtration. That's the best air cleaning. And those trees take 50 years to replace. So I'm hoping that as you plot out the steps, there get to be larger and larger portions.
1 minute.
That are attentive to the things that we have on hand that are completely safe for everybody in every sense of the word. And that's why to bring in the Drew Forest, the preservation and conservation of the Drew Forest is of such importance. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. And we move on to our agenda discussions. 2023 Climate Action Recommendations. Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, I'm going to speak from my seat this time, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the presentation. Thank you. So tonight we're presenting what we're calling Part 2 of the Climate Action Plan. This is the 2023 Climate Action Recommendations. Next slide. As a reminder, Madison's climate goals are derived from New Jersey state energy and resiliency goals, which are laid out here. We discussed these in a little bit more depth at the January 23rd presentation, but all of these great resources are available for further study, and they're referenced in both the climate action goals and the 2023 recommendations report. Next slide. So as a reminder, at the last meeting on January 23rd, we presented that 2022 Climate Action Report, which contained 12 energy and resiliency goals that set a path to 2050, and it also described a climate action process. Tonight's report is the 2023 Climate Action Recommendations. The idea is that these are actions that the Climate Action Committee is recommending that the borough review and adopt for actions we can pursue in the next 12 to 18 months that support the climate goals that were presented at our last meeting. Both of these reports will be available on Rosenet. In fact, the presentation and report from the 23rd are already online, and tomorrow we will be posting this presentation as well as the full report. The Climate Action Recommendations report that we're discussing tonight recommends actions, 9 of them specifically, and there's a worksheet at the end of the report for each recommendation. The worksheet outlines the stakeholders and departments involved in the recommendation. It highlights potential obstacles or barriers. It mentions funding sources where applicable, and it lists concrete steps for each recommendation. So the idea is that we already have a work plan for each of the recommendations that we're putting forth tonight. That's attached as an appendix to the report. Next slide. So the Climate Action Recommendations report is structured around 9 recommendations. In 2023, we're suggesting 9 recommendations that are organized by 5 objectives for energy and resiliency. Those of you that have been following along should recognize these objectives from our April report last year in 2022. So tonight, we are making 1 recommendation to reduce transportation emissions, 2 recommendations to accelerate renewable and clean energy, 2 recommendations to improve energy efficiency and affordability, 1 recommendation to reduce building emissions through electrification, and 3 recommendations to build climate-resilient communities and natural resources. Next slide. The first recommendation is to reduce transportation emissions. As discussed on the 23rd, we are proposing that the borough resolve to stop buying gas-powered, non-emergency light-duty vehicles for the municipal fleet, and that we should replace existing fleet vehicles with the appropriate plug-in electric vehicles when those are available. As many of you know, Madison's first plug-in electric vehicle, a Chevy Bolt, was received in August of last year for the parking patrol, and another Chevy Bolt purchase was approved in November of 2022 for use by building department inspectors. We also talked a little bit at the last meeting about how PEV technology for some operations is not available yet. So for instance, snow plowing with light-duty utility vehicles. These are issues to take into consideration when planning for replacement of our municipal fleet. Next slide. These 2 recommendations pertain to accelerating renewable and clean energy. The first one has to do with a great program that we participated in. The U.S. Department of Energy offers a free SolSmart program where they evaluate a town's solar permitting process and provides recommendations. We adopted several of those recommendations last year, and we were awarded a bronze level certification after making those improvements. And there's a few more recommendations that we would like to pursue. They generally pertain to process training for permitting and inspecting staff, as well as first responder training on solar power systems. So the recommendation is to pursue those recommendations in order to encourage solar installations in the borough. And the second item pertains to our grid. Madison Electric Utility, as we all know, has extremely high reliability performance. It's one of the great amenities of living in Madison is our excellent electric utility. In order for that reliability to remain high, we are recommending that we should resume sending annual outage data to the Electrical Institute of America to measure our success in maintaining our high present levels of electric utility reliability. This actually was a recommendation in 2015 by the Strategic Planning Committee on the Utilities. This was recommended that we implement reliability performance monitoring and submit those metrics to the EIA for comparison to similar utilities. And the borough did do that for several years. This same recommendation was adopted, but the submissions have been a little bit intermittent, and the committee strongly recommends that we resume regular data submissions to make sure that our grid is performing at the high level of reliability that we've all come to rely on. Next slide. These two recommendations pertain to energy efficiency and affordability. The first one is to implement an energy efficiency outreach campaign. There are so many channels that we have here in the borough to reach out to Madison residents and businesses to help them understand what kinds of energy conservation resources are available. That includes home energy audits, links to energy efficiency programs and incentives at the state and federal level. There are great trade events, and we're suggesting some new tools to allow residents to assess their home energy consumption levels. These are resources that would be primarily digital and distributed on RoseNet by the building department, and we can also partner with folks in town such as realtors, contractors, and home inspectors to help spread the word about these programs so that when people are undertaking a renovation or a new construction project, they have access to this information. The fifth recommendation is to adopt a green building policy for new projects. So the idea is that we, based on the Sustainable Jersey Model Resolution, adopt a policy that encourages or requires consideration of green building practices for new municipal and commercial construction projects. Green building practices demonstrate real municipal leadership. They reduce operational costs, and they promote market transformation in the building sector because we can lead as a municipality. And by encouraging other developers in town to consider green building practices, we can provide information and encourage that market transformation even further. The second part of this is that when proposals are sought for borough-designated redevelopment projects, so by way of example, Rose Hall was a redevelopment project, the Walnut Street Affordable Housing Project is a redevelopment project, we recommend including green building goals for those developer proposals. So when developers are competing to develop in Madison, they know that they will be judged more favorably if they have energy efficiency and green building criteria in their proposal. Next slide. This recommendation is to reduce building emissions through electrification. We touched on this, go back one, sorry, Michael. There we go. Replace gas burning equipment in municipal buildings. We touched on this during the goals presentation on the 23rd. We have a portfolio of buildings here in town that only use a sliver of the total gas usage across the entire borough, but they are important because we can basically show that it saves money to transition to high-efficiency systems. And we already have the tools in place to plan ahead for this. The engineering department tracks the age and maintenance needs, the life expectancy of our building systems and our municipal buildings. That includes forecasts for when equipment and appliances will reach the end of their service life. So the idea here is that as these systems start to age out, we should be replacing those building systems at the end of their service life with high-efficiency heat pump equipment. And we can plan for that replacement through the capital budgeting process. We'll save money on fossil fuel costs, we'll have healthier indoor air quality, we'll cut emissions and pollution, and basically avoid installing gas-fired equipment that will be obsolete before the end of its life. I'll just give two examples. There's, I want to make a point here that's important, that's repeated in the recommendations report, is that any equipment replacement should be accompanied by an estimate of energy cost savings, so we can see at the outset what the operational savings will be if we switch to a high-efficiency system. We have a couple of systems in town that are approaching replacement, such as the James Library cooling system. That's where the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts is located. It's a ducted air conditioning system that's nearing the end of its service life. For instance, that could be replaced with essentially a two-way air conditioner that cools in the summer and heats in the winter. We also have an old model gas-fired boiler and window air conditioners at the DPW garage that are coming to the end of their service life. It'd be great to get a heat pump system there as well. Next slide. These are the final three recommendations. They pertain to resiliency and natural resources. So recommendations 7, 8, and 9 all pertain to making our community more resilient and stronger as part of climate adaptation. The first is to update our complete streets policy to include a green streets component. So green street design tools integrate stormwater control and water management within the right-of-way. They're an important component for complete street design. They capture runoff, they reduce ponding, and they promote safer walking, biking, and driving. And I'll note that Madison's complete streets policy is already in effect, but a green component is not integrated into the current policy document, and we think it's important to do so. The next recommendation is to adopt a water conservation ordinance based on the Sustainable Jersey Action. We know here in town that we have concerns about our water supply and the long-term maintenance of our drinking water infrastructure. So we have recently implemented an increase in water rates to help mitigate that. The committee recommends that we explore the pros and cons of moving from a voluntary water conservation rule to mandatory water conservation rules, specifically to curb the overuse of drinking water for lawn irrigation. And the ninth item is to complete a community equity and diversity profile, again, based on an action outlined by Sustainable Jersey. This profile would describe the diversity of our Madison community with demographic data, and it would identify social groups that are vulnerable or marginalized, and especially identify key communication barriers and the networks of these groups so we can make sure we're reaching them. And another thing this profile will do for us is help Madison work towards diversity and equity on our boards and commissions, especially introducing environmental justice in our zoning and planning. And it will help us meet the requirement that is now part of the land use element that we include a vulnerability analysis required by law to be incorporated into the next Madison Master Plan update. So these 9 actions, I went through them pretty quickly. There's a lot more information in the report, which the council members have had a chance to review. I'll also mention that additionally in the report, there's a great number of items that are initiatives that are already in progress, and we flagged those as work in progress and next steps. We did a pretty comprehensive survey over the last year of all the sustainability initiatives pertaining to climate and resiliency that are currently underway in the borough, and those initiatives are significant. So we've created like a snapshot of next steps for the work in progress. And I think it's important to include those in this report because I foresee the possibility that there will be coming climate action recommendations in next year or future years that pertain to the work in progress. So as you read the report, you'll see that there's 9 recommendations that are highlighted in blue boxes, just as you see in this presentation, and there's a number of boxes that are call-outs for next steps and work in progress that are meant to provide context and information and make a really complete report, but do not generate a recommendation at this time. Next slide. So here's where we are with Madison's Climate Action Plan. Tonight, February 13th, we have a resolution that the mayor mentioned to adopt climate goals and the climate action process. That's R63, which we'll be voting on. At a subsequent meeting, we look forward to adopting climate action recommendations drawn from this report. Assuming the Climate Action Committee is formed as a regular committee, which is the recommendation of the report and the resolution tonight, the Climate Action Committee is ready to start compiling that 2023 climate data to see how we are doing. implement the actions that the council chooses to adopt, and then begin developing recommendations for 2024. And as we've heard from so many people tonight, and from my colleagues and the mayor who have all stressed this is so important, this last item, that it's imperative that Madison help other New Jersey towns, our neighbors, our region, our whole state, move to adopt a climate action process like we have. Because Madison is a great example of what a small town can do, and if we can amplify that across the region, across the state, then we will really be doing our part to mitigate the worst threats of climate change. Next slide. So some of you might be familiar with the warming stripes. This is an image that shows stylized global mean temperatures from 1850 on the left side to the "We Are Here" mark. And each band of color represents the average global temperature for each year between 1850 and today. It goes from light and dark blues, which are cooler years in the 1800s, to pinks and reds, which are hotter years, as you can see, approaches the "We Are Here" mark. We know that significant warming is locked in now, but if we act, we can avoid an unlivable future and, frankly, total ecological breakdown with the choices that we make today. And this is a sort of stylized representation of the choices we have to make. If we make no change, if we wait for someone else to act, we will be charting a path to an unlivable future. If we act and choose to make changes here in Madison and beyond, we know that there are some threats that we will continue to face, but we will be making a difference and avoiding, frankly, chaos of an unimaginable scale that is, frankly, terrifying to contemplate for our kids and grandkids. So this is so important for Madison because, as we've discussed tonight, we can make smart choices for borough buildings, for our vehicles, for our purchased power and our grid. But it's also important for each and every household and business in Madison. We know that thanks to the federal action last year of the Inflation Reduction Act, one person's ability to make a climate impact is greater than ever. According to a report from Princeton University, about 30% of the emissions reductions that will come from the Inflation Reduction Act will come from consumer choices that are enabled by new federal incentives. So that's a reminder to all of us that we can act locally at the government and policy level. We can also act as individuals and households and businesses to make change that will magnify and ramify through our community and beyond. So I want to urge the borough to pursue tonight's recommendations to set us as a community on a path to a healthy, safe, and resilient future. And I ask for your support in adopting our 12 energy and resiliency goals that we laid out on the 23rd. Thank you, colleagues.
Excellent report. Thank you so much. Questions? Questions or comments? Bob?
Yeah, minor comments, really. First of all, Rachel, when we talked, I told you how much I support this. And what I really like is what I've heard other people say. You're making people aware of what's going on. And, you know, I joke with people where I live. You know, I'm one of these people that love the winter. If it was up to me, it'd be 10 degrees and I'd be walking around in my shorts. And, you know, people say, oh, Bob, you must love this 70 degrees. No, I don't. You know, I don't. It's not normal what we're going through right now. You know, I often say global warming is a misnomer because people like warm weather. It's catastrophic climate change. It is what it is. I mean, 70 degrees this Thursday, that's not right. I'm sorry. I remember as a kid growing up, you know, we had snow around Thanksgiving and would be on the ground to near April or May. But what's great about your project is you're embedding this in the budget. You know, I understand the concerns about the cost to the borough. I get it. Look, right now I have an SUV coming off of lease. And what do? Do I lease another one? I can't afford an EV. I mean, that's going to be $600 a month to lease one. So I joked with Rachel when she talked to me. I said, well, you know, I could get a used Hummer H2. I could pick one of those up for $25,000. It sits in the garage all week because I don't drive, and it would cost me next to nothing. It doesn't. I don't care how much mileage it gets because I don't drive that much. But that's not a good way to go. But that's just the personal decision that I'll be making, and that's what I think mostly the borough will be doing too. What is the best interest of the borough financially, but trying to meet the goals? Because embedded in this, it says goals. They're not mandates, and goals can be moved each year. You know, if you want to buy, if we want 5 electric cars this year, well, maybe we don't get 5 this year, maybe we get 3. But you got to start somewhere, because if you don't do it now, our kids are going to pay the piper. You know, I won't be around to see the catastrophic end, but my grandchildren will be, and kids not yet born will be. So this is something which I think, a small measure, we have to start, and you hope other communities adopt it as well.
Thanks, Bob.
Welcome.
Eric? And John?
Thanks, Rachel. You know, I think what I like about this set of goals the most is it largely focuses on things we would likely do anyway, right? We're going to, at some point, replace the heating plant in this building, at DPW, at other places. And like the budgetary strategic guidelines that we've used over the years, this gives us a lens to look at all of these projects through. When the time comes, we may evaluate things, and just as we're finding with the alternative fuels for our municipal fleet, maybe we're not there yet, right? But I think it is contingent upon all of us to at least look through the lens and evaluate where we are when we get there. You know, as we know, heat pumps are getting better and better every year. So by the time we get to DPW 2 or 3 years from now, those efficiencies may be where we need them to be to not have to rely on, you know, gas backups or other things. So I think this is great work. I also like that it focuses primarily, at least to start, and in this round of recommendations on things that we, the council, control, and our municipal objectives. While we do have some things to perhaps incentivize certain things in development, there's nothing here about taking an existing house with a gas furnace and a gas stove and ripping them out of the wall and forcing people to do something they don't want to do.
I just have to say that will never be a recommendation, just so we're clear.
So, you know, we can lead by example, and people can choose to follow or not. And I think that's just where we need to go at this point. But if we don't start leading by example, there'll be no example to follow. So, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I have one quick comment, which is, there was a question earlier, who makes the choices about money to be spent? And the important, you know, the nature of the climate action process is that every year recommendations will be set forward to the council, to the governing body, and the council will make decisions about what are our budget priorities, what is our spending plan, where do we want to invest, and where do we need to hold off. And the flexibility that you referred to make prudent decisions on a yearly basis is baked into this process.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll tell you what impressed me most about this presentation, besides the overall quality of what is put forth, is the fact that there isn't one single, at least I was not able to identify, one single recommendation that you're making that is going to be approved by this council over time. And I think that's really important, because I think it's important for us to do the research that was suggested, to look at what the alternatives are, and to really think about how we're going to do this and what we're going to do. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I think that's just incredibly impressive. So I want to thank you very much for that. And that's all, Mayor. Tom?
So if anybody from the community takes the time to go look at this, it's available on Roseland. It's so comprehensive. I think that it might have been a good idea for Rachel to be the presentation person that from the public. I have to turn this on and say it all over again? Darn. All right, so this report is actually available on RoseNet. It's so comprehensive. A lot of effort was put into it, and a lot of thorough research was done before it was completed. And I was saying that maybe it would have been a good idea if Rachel made the presentation first, and then the public commented, because a lot of the questions that they had are answered in your part of your presentation, Rachel. You have every angle covered. There is going to be a green policy for building all over the state and the country. It's coming, so there's no reason for us not to be the progressive ones when we know that some of the changes that we're recommending will be good for the future of commercial and residential homes. I did comment earlier that when we do move to try and help the community move towards more sustainable services for their homes, maybe we can incentivize the community also. In addition to what's available out there federally, we also have information available to the community where they can submit for grants. And I do live this life to a certain extent. My house is heated and cooled with geothermal heating and cooling that I installed in 2009. The system was a little more expensive to install at the time, but all that I use to run it is electricity. And if you were here for one of Rachel's previous presentations, a lot of the electricity that we purchase for the borough is from green sources, and our objective is to continue to purchase electricity from greener sources. So I had no problem moving away from natural gas for my home. And I would suspect that 120 years ago, when the community was used to oil or wood, and all of a sudden we're laying gas lines, a lot of people were saying, what are you trying to do to my house? I don't want a gas pipe coming into my house. So the same thing's going to happen now. We're going to make this move, and you can choose to do it or not. None of this is mandatory for residents. It's suggestions, and we're trying to educate to the best of our ability with our knowledge. But for the borough, we're going to try and move in that direction, and it's going to make the borough, like the goal is more sustainable, cleaner, and help our own environment, and then hopefully we'll spread this message throughout the rest of the state. So I really commend you, Rachel. You did such a great job. And the last thing I want to comment, and I'm not trying to be controversial, but the average car, and I have gas combustion cars, I also have electric cars, over the life of the car, they'll probably use about 17,000 liters of gas, right? That's 34,000 pounds of gasoline. That's 300 times, the studies say, that's 300 times more energy intensive than extracting lithium out of the ground to make batteries. And that 34,000 pounds of gas does create more pollution than we would use to charge our cars. And I live this way in my life, so I'm not trying to pretend that, I think this is good because other people say it. So I do believe that this is going to be good for our future. Maybe now's not the time for everything, so we'll continue to study it, but please everybody go online and read this report, because you can get a lot of information out of there. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Not much I can add outside of, again, thank you, Rachel, and the committee for all your work. Tremendous job. And as has already been stated, there are things in here that the borough has direct control on. How we heat this building, how we heat our other buildings, and the fact there's guidelines to make sure that it's a full study on how much it's going to cost over the life of the equipment and so on. And then there's the other things, such as the 1,000 EVs in Madison. That all we can do is educate and guide and make sure we have the infrastructure as a town that controls its electric grid in place to support that. So we work in tandem. If, as Bob said, if you like the car you have, you're going to continue to drive that. No one's going to be coming knocking at your door with saying you got to get rid of it. No, it's your own choice. But if you're ready to make the step to a plug-in, we'll have the infrastructure to support it. Any other comments? So we've got the resolution here. And this is just the start, right?
Just the beginning, that's right. It's a plan to 2050, which is very ambitious in terms of the timescale, but it is it just goes to show that we need to make small, steady, incremental, but significant change year over year to get to that 30-year goal. And Michael, if you could just go to the last slide, I want to thank my fellow committee members Kathleen Cacavalli, Peter Freed, Mary Ellen Hennessy-Jones, Lisa Jordan, and Kirsten Wallenstein. A lot of the comments have been obviously directed at me tonight, but this has been a team effort from start to finish. And I once again thank you for your commitment to this work and your commitment to seeing it through as we stare down a 30-year commitment we've signed on to. So thank you, committee members.
Another round for all the committee members. All right, we now shift on to budget hearing, the draft budget discussion. Jim?
There we go. There's an old Greek proverb that said, "Society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit." I'm going to be 83 in 2050, and I certainly hope that lots of progress has been made between now and then. Thank you, Michael. If you'll advance to the next slide. I first want to recognize Chrissy Mahler, who doesn't want to be embarrassed, but is sitting behind me. She was a significant help with the budget this year. She's our tax collector, but she also passed all 10 of her courses, along with her CFO exam, the hardest exam out of all the exams and certifications that the state of New Jersey requires. And I appreciate all of her help, so I wanted to acknowledge her being here this evening and acknowledge her help in this process. The proposed hearing schedule, Councilwoman Ehrlich mentioned, so we'll just flip through that. That's published and available. Tonight, we're just going to talk about the initial municipal budget and fund balance. The next slide talks about goals and important questions, and our goal is to limit tax increase, maintain services, maintain funding for capital programs, and ensure the long-term financial stability by not causing systemic issues. If you said, Jim, I want a 10% tax reduction, that would be a long-term problem we couldn't do. So I would have to push back on that. Small, predictable, incremental moves is the best. It's what the rating agencies look for, and it's the best to keep us on a strong financial footing. Important questions to ask are how much capital can we fund? Are there any abnormally large appropriations? Any decreases in revenue lines and other outstanding issues to consider? Next slide. Important points and summary of the issues with this budget. The single biggest issue we face is that revenues are still off. Almost every appropriation line is up due to inflation, supply chain, and other pressures, while many revenue lines are down. Because of this, we're unable to fully fund capital. We can do most of it. And we've got a lot of other projects going on that are not funded through municipal capital. So I don't think we're giving short shift to it, but hopefully I'm hopeful we'll get to more capital funding in future years. But it's something we have to manage this year. Municipal revenues are almost $700,000 below pre-pandemic levels. As such, we've had to use other revenues to fill the gap and trim appropriations. A 2% tax increase only generates about $314,000 in revenue, so that $700,000 revenue loss does not get filled. And there are increased costs of over $640,000. There are four major costs right there listed: health, pension, police and fire salary, and legal. Next two slides, Michael. We'll skip through to two slides. This shows budget revenues. This is line 2 on the budget document, and line B2 on the budget document towards the end of this. And it shows municipal revenues. You can see that we had a significant drop in 2021 and 2022, but the 2023 number of $3.3 million has not gotten back to the 2020 number of $3.4 million. So that is a challenge. Next slide. This shows 3 of the major continued to be issues with revenues. They have gotten better, no doubt about it. Court revenue, daily parking fees, and interest on deposits has gotten better, but it was a low in 2021 of only $128,000. This year, it did increase, but not nearly to what we had in 2019, which is $674,000. So that is one of the challenges that we're facing. And we'll go 2 more slides, Michael. This is municipal fund balance. It also shows fund balance or surplus for the municipal, the electric, and the water utility. We are coming back. We talked about, I use that plane analogy, are we going to land, are we going to level off, are we going to start to come back up? We are coming back up on municipal fund balance. A lot of it is being generated by the electric utility. And we know that in the future years will be limited due to potential increasing costs. The next slide, I'm not going to go into detail, but it shows municipal fund balance. The top is like an income statement. It shows where that fund balance is coming from. For example, S1 is taxable, non-taxable revenues. If you look in 2020, it's gray, but it is $847,000 in the negative. We were short $847,000 in municipal revenues that year. Other items that generate fund balance are listed there, cancellation of prior year appropriations. We've talked about that before, but I'll quickly summarize that. If we have $250,000 set aside for rock salt and we only spend $150,000 in 2021, that additional $100,000 sits in what's called an appropriation reserve in all of 2022 in case we have bills to pay. At the end of 2022, that $100,000 of budgeted appropriations that wasn't spent is released. The appropriations are cleared. The appropriation reserve is cleared, and that $100,000 quote unquote falls to fund balance. The bottom section shows the beginning fund balance and the use of it in the municipal budget, and then the balance at year end. It's like a balance sheet, if you will. We had very low fund balance in 2020 of $8.4 million. We had a drop of $2 million. If you look at S13, the decrease, there was a decrease of over $2 million in 2020. We are now settling back in. We don't anticipate fund balance to be as robust this year. We had very low anticipated interest revenue, and that is up. And when we go into the budget and anticipate that revenue, as we have this year, unless it goes up a lot more next year, we won't get that additional fund balance generated. So that is municipal fund balance. We'll go forward 2 slides. And I grew up in this town, and I never really knew what was going on in Giralda, so I always like to show this. The bottom is the V-shaped building very near Woodland and Lewanika, and the diagonal going up shows Lewanika Way, so you see Giralda 5 is very prominent from Lewanika Way, and then Giralda 3, which is the old Quest building, and Giralda 1, which is a multi-tenant building, are very visible from Madison Avenue. The new Atlantic Health is on the corner. Go to the next slide. This shows our largest taxpayers, and that's a lot of money. Christy, how much do we collect every year? About $65 million? 74 million. She's on it. So we collect $74 million. These 6 properties represent a significant amount of that $74 million. I'm sure glad I don't have to pay $1.4 million for my house. But they are significant properties. They are subject to tax appeals. But it's always good to show how Rose Hall and Madison Place and the GVR property are and continue to be the 3rd largest payer of taxes. I put that in quote because some of that is pilot payment there. So those are the buildings. Many of them are under tax appeal, and so we could be seeing reduced amounts. As a matter of fact, in 2021, the Giralda 5 building successfully appealed and reduced their taxes by over $100,000 a year. If we go to the next slide, it talks about revenue from new ratables. Every year we have tax appeals, and every year, hopefully, we have new ratables that come on. A home has an addition put on it, a theater becomes a multi-use tenanted apartment building downtown, and alike. And the net difference between the loss of ratables and appeals and the increase in ratables of new construction can either generate or not generate additional taxable revenue. So in years past, we've had over $100,000 in additional revenue from new ratables. Last year was the first year we were at 0, which was yucky. But this year we did have a small increase in new ratables that is reflected in the budget in upcoming numbers, and I'll show them. If we could advance 2 slides. We're going to talk quickly about the appropriations. The mayor in the past has had high school students come over and they play Family Feud, and the question is, what are the top 6 appropriation departments in the budget? And it's police, public works, fire, garbage, library, and sewage. They continue to be the largest items in our budget. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see them graphically represented, how much the police is at $7 million versus Public Works at $4 million versus engineering at $785,000. So we'll go to the next slide. All this is going to be available on RoseNet, so I know I'm moving quickly, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that any resident has at any point in time. Pension costs, unfortunately, continue to increase. As you can see, from 2018 to 2023, police pension costs have gone up by $310,000. That's 28% over 6 years. It's certainly a lot more than 2% a year. There are 40 members in the police and fire, of our police and fire staff that are in this pension system. So each member, each firefighter or each police officer, we are paying $35,400 in a pension bill for them every year. Why is explained down below. I'm not going to go into detail, but happy to explain. It basically is the fact that they can join the force when they're 25, retire when they're 47 after, or 50 after 25 years, and immediately draw their pension. Typically not the case on a defined benefit plan. You typically have to wait till you reach a certain age, 60, 65, like you do in Social Security. That's not the case here. If a police officer retires when they're 50 years old, or a firefighter, the pension gets paid immediately. So it's much, much more expensive because it's being paid for up to 30 years. We'll skip 2 pages and go to the draft municipal budget. I know there are a lot of numbers here, and council was given a digital copy of this to look at, so I wouldn't want anyone in the audience to try to read all these numbers. They will be online, but it basically shows all the revenues and all the appropriations. What's great about this document is, for the most part, it hasn't changed in like 30 years. So you can go back and look at a document similar to this that was typed up by a typewriter, because back then we didn't have Word or any sort of software or computers, but it allows you to kind of compare what it was like in 1980 versus what it's like in 2023. Health insurance, police and fire, pension, and legal, as previously mentioned, are representing $648,000 of an increase. Property taxes are going to be going up $365,000, $314,000 due on existing ratables, and then that additional $50,000 on new ratables. And if we go to the next slide, it highlights the items that I'm talking about, so it's just easier for everyone's eye to be drawn to them. This budget is asking, it does not have any reduction in services. It maintains a good amount of capital funding. I am hoping that we'll be able to do more funding in the future. If you look at line B12 in the past, I'm sorry, I apologize, not line B12. If you look at line B32, it's highlighted at the very bottom, the lowest one. In years past, we've funded $3.5 million. We're in capital improvement fund, we're only funding $3 million. So I'd like that to be higher, but in short, no reduction in services, the ability to keep the tax increase at 2% for an existing home, which is an extra $5.05 a month for the average home. So it is not a challenge, I think, a terrible burden for a resident to absorb that. Prices are going up across the board. Unfortunately, they're going up on all of our appropriations. And I think that if we go to the next slide, this is a slide you've seen in the past that talks about the average home, talks about their property taxes of being 13.7 or 13,700 in 2022, and the municipal portion being just a little over $3,000. The rest going to the county and the school board. The previously mentioned increase, as written in red at the bottom, is only $5.05. For the $3,000 a year, this home is getting fire, police, crossing guards, garbage, recycling, yard waste, leaf pickup, recreation park, senior citizen, sewage treatment, health department, fire hydrants and street lights, public library, plowing and maintenance of 50 roads, 50 miles of roads, and all of the operations here at the municipal level. So the next slide talks about the challenges and the good news. We've talked a lot about the challenges, so I'm just going to focus that we can maintain a $2 million electric dividend and we can consider the project of the solar carport. We have a number of major capital projects in the works. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to an east wing renovation. We have a major project that's being completed now for radios, almost $1.5 million. There's no change in service to residents, and we do have money set aside for the water meter replacement. So we have a lot of capital happening. And then the last slide, I just want to show everybody how cool it was down in DC. And as the mayor said, there's the picture on the upper left of the George Washington portrait, which when you entered this gallery was right there, and then you came around the corner and saw our Lincoln portrait, and it was quite an honor to be there. I appreciate being given the opportunity to represent the borough. I'm here to answer any questions. I really think the rubber is going to hit the road more at the next meeting when we get, the next meeting will be the department heads. The meeting after that, we'll get strategic planning guidelines, and we'll be able to tighten up on these numbers. Truth be told, I already know there's a few changes to these numbers. Minor ones, $5,000, $10,000, but this isn't set in stone. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
Well, a lot of information, and as Jim has said a couple times, we say it many times, we try to provide as much information as possible as a fully transparent. I think we do a great job, but that also means that sometimes you may walk out of here with your head spinning. So that's why it's all posted on Rosenet, so you can hear the highlights of it and then go visit it and, lie in bed and get ready to go to sleep and take a closer look at it. But it's all good information, and you've got...
I spoke too fast, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right.
So, and if we go to the next slides, just because this always makes me happy, what's the next slide, Michael, is it there? For those interested in learning more, the next slide shows, and this is all on Rosenet, go to the next slide, Michael. This shows a detailed explanation of what fund balance is. The next slide talks about how property taxes work, and if we go one more slide, it talks about the fictitious town of Conleyville and how when we do have a building like the a theater that gets renovated and repurposed and an increased rateable, that it actually does help property taxes, and there's a simple illustration of that. For those who want to learn more, that will be also posted on Rosenet tomorrow morning.
All right. And Bob?
Okay, I just have two things. First, could we get a flat screen over there? That would...
Eric and I were talking about
Because
it.
my neck is about ready to pop.
Okay.
Okay. You know what I'm going to focus in on? It's property tax appeals. That's what I do for a living in New York. Do we have, I'm going to assume that we have enough money allocated for potential appeals. But I think, do you agree that that's probably our biggest exposure? That's an unknown number. Meaning, they're going to come in. I mean, if this was New York, I'd be licking my chops to go after these properties. Do we feel that the attorneys or the firms that represent these properties are going to really go for the jugular this next year?
Every year we review the appeals and we attempt to settle them, and we did last December settle some of them.
Good.
We attempt to settle them where we don't pay any money out, but instead give them future consideration instead, because if we pay it out, we're paying it all out. Even though it's taxes that we collected on behalf of the county and the school board, we don't ask them for any money. We're on the hook.
We're on the hook for it, yeah.
We have close to $800,000 in a tax appeal reserve. This budget includes additional funding for that.
Good.
But we certainly will have to pay out, as you have seen in the past when we pass resolutions approving certain tax appeals, that people will get paid. It is going to be a continuing concern. I know the planning board is looking at expanding the uses at Geralda Farms, and I think that'll
help big time.
Certainly help, because the office market is and will continue to be soft. However, the wing-shaped building on the corner of Lewanika and Woodland Road has an excellent landlord that is fully dedicated to creating a real contemporary, I don't want to say state-of-the-art, but a real progressive building that corporations and small companies will want to rent. So we're hopeful that we have still some good demand, but it's a challenge, yes.
Yeah, good. That's good news.
Tom? Is your microphone on? And Michael, is mine working? Okay.
You were good? All right, sorry. Thanks, Jim. Very comprehensive. You did your homework as usual. Good information for the community and fairly easy to comprehend. I've been through school board meetings with those budgets a little more complicated. So, well, one question I have, or one of a few. So you said that our interest revenue is going to be down next year.
No. No, what I said
Did I
was...
misunderstand?
Can I answer that now?
Definitely.
Okay. So last year, we probably anticipated $100,000 in interest revenue because we knew interest rates were stinky. We ended up getting, I'm just going to use illustrative numbers because I don't try to memorize too many numbers, it just hurts. Let's say we got $350,000 in interest revenue. That additional $250,000 from what we anticipated, 100, to what we actually got, 350, becomes fund balance or surplus. This year, we're anticipating $300,000 in interest income. So unless interest income continues to grow and it goes from 300,000 to 650 or 700,000, we won't get as much of a boost in fund balance from that. So that's what I meant.
Sure. But you're not, I think that we could ask a lot of finance people, but I think this year should be the best year in the last decade as far as your interest income.
Correct.
What you're presenting here of $228,000 is very short, unless I'm misreading it.
We can only anticipate
Yeah,
what we got in the previous year.
right.
Unless we ask for a real special exemption, which is not necessarily easy to get. And we can't say for certainty what we know the gas prices are going to be, so we have to be conservative, what we know the interest income will be. So we're conservative. We anticipate what we think is going to be the interest, and if good happens, it doesn't get spent or lost. It becomes fund balance or surplus, which we're able to then use maybe to increase our capital spending next year or to increase other spending next year. So I don't want you to think that because we're being conservative on the price that we're assuming for fuel or the interest that we're getting that that money's going to get lost. It's not going to get spent on party hats. It's going to end up falling and becoming municipal fund balance that you will have the opportunity to appropriate in future years.
Sure, but then it's also going to offset how we have to fund the balance through tax revenue. So that's part of my point, that we will have money because the tax revenue goes to the general fund too. So this will be more revenue to offset what you need for next year. And you do have more needs. You did a very good job of showing us what you're going to be needing next year. There is new construction that's coming up too. I know that you can only anticipate so much, but there's some very big projects still in the borough that hopefully will be completed. Maybe not this year. Well, one of them will, Community Place. That's probably going to have a nice impact from an old lot that was there before.
Yes.
Right? So that's hopefully something that we can use to offset what's going to be our cost to run the budget, the borough.
I'm kind of hopeful, didn't mean to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but I'm kind of hopeful that that type of good news
Yeah.
is what gets us back to being able to fund $3.5 million in capital next year so we can really get the things that we need to purchase in the 5-year capital plan, whether it's we cut back on roads, we cut back on a lot of projects this year in the 5-year capital plan because we knew we were only going to be able to fund so much. So that's the hope.
Okay, yeah, I'm always the one also conservatively saying, do we have to increase the cost of living to the community? And then what's going to be the impact from the schools? I know we don't manage that, but that's a big factor that we ultimately deliver that bill to the community to pay back the schools for $3.5 million for this month, like Rachel told us. So that's something that we have to consider. And it's a burden. It all, right, accumulates. 5 years, it's 2% a year is 10%. So, but thanks, Jim. I understand a lot of it and the need for it. I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Yes, Rachel.
I just have a question. I need to relearn this a little bit every year. But on slide 10, which is a kind of high-level summary, money, wait, that's not my slide 10. Municipal fund balance is the slide I'm looking for. That's the one. Okay. Can you give some examples of what is in line S1, non-taxable revenues?
Non-taxable revenues is everything from the interest that we talked about, parking fees, court, licensing. I should talk to Chrissy because she posts all these revenues, licenses and fees and alike. And when we have more revenue than we anticipate, it's a positive number on this schedule. So you see in 2020, it was negative because everything just fell through the floor. We anticipated a lot in interest income, and then the interest rates went down to almost zero. So this particular year, because of the interest rates and other things, we had a higher year. We think we're going to fall back in 2023 on S1 to having a more traditional $600,000 generation of fund balance in that. It just, we don't know for sure what we're going to get in terms of some of those revenues, but, and it has to do with how much we anticipate. So let's say cell tower leases are $150,000, that's a bad number, $120,000. If I anticipate $100,000, $20,000 becomes fund balance. If I anticipate, if I'm trying to keep it to 2%, I may anticipate $115,000 or $118,000 in cell tower leases. Then virtually no fund balance would be generated from that. And every year we're using this year, 5.9 million in fund balance. So we have to be conscious of making slow incremental changes so we don't tip that apple cart and find ourselves in a problem where we have to increase taxes significantly because we over-anticipated revenues, under-anticipated appropriations.
So that was my second question, this idea about using fund balance, which I see is S9. Is this what we're taking out of our fund balance to be utilized in the municipal budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so if you are really into it, you then go to the slide at the very end and you see, don't do it, Michael, just stay here. But for those at home who are flipping on their computer, or if you have it in front of you, line B1 is municipal fund balance, and you look at 2022 is $5,956,000, and you look here on S9, it's $5,956,000. So those two numbers tie out, and they'll always tie out. So thank you for. It's not easy. It's
glad to help.
It's not easy. It's not like running a business. You know, we've talked about this before. This is a spending plan. We have to sit here and guess, and like Karnak, like Johnny Carson, if I'm going to date myself, and sit here and say, how much are we, Bob Lanigan smiling at, how much are we going to think that fuel prices are going to be this year? Are they going to go up or are they going to go down? How much rock salt are we going to use? Boy, it doesn't look like we're going to use much rock salt this year, but I'm not going to, who knows what next December is going to be like. We've had some terrible Novembers and Decembers, so we budget conservatively, so we have the ability to deliver the services when we need to.
I think Rachel had some more questions.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, thank you. Thank you, Jim, you answered my questions.
All right. Anything else? All right, again, very good presentation, and more to come in the coming weeks, and as we try to strive and go ahead and study it online to get more answers. And now we'll move on to ordinance for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance scheduled for hearing was introduced by title and passed on the first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on January the 23rd, 2023. It was posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinance 14-2023 for second reading. Ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $85,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund to purchase a Mason dump truck and accessories for the Public Works Department.
I open the hearing to anyone in the public that wishes to comment on ordinance 14. Please step forward if you want to comment on this ordinance. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 14-2023.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold-Lapudis?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 14-2023 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. We are now on to our second opportunities for invitation for public comment. This is when you may comment on any topic. Same guidelines are in effect. That means when you get up to the lectern, you're going to state your name, your address, and write the same on the clipboard. We, again, have the same Open Public Meetings Act regulations that Marina shared earlier to keep in mind. And again, try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we will give you a 1-minute grace. Claire?
Claire Whitcomb. I'm here as the Valentine Ferry, and I'm very pleased that the Valentine Ferry made it to the clerk's office and to the mayor. Valentines really should come in a lot of flavors, so your pack of cards has 4 varieties, and I would like to call out that one of them is Valentine, I think you're tremendous. These are all on the Drew Forest website. Did you guys see that? I hope that you guys share this and really feel the love. These cards were signed by residents. Some of them were my neighbors. I just want to tell you, Bob, that one of my neighbors didn't use Valentine. I think you're super foxy because she didn't think that would be good for the mayor.
Boy.
Valentine, I'm absolutely wild about you. Wildflowers, which are, the forest is a very big pollinator place. Valentine, I'm so ducky to have you. Those are your 4, that's your 4-pack. We also tabled at Sunday Motor Co. on Saturday morning and got a lot of signatures there. And also, the cards vanished. I brought a lot around Town Hall. I gave Jim a Valentine. I gave Liz a Valentine. A little birdie told me her tweet. Here you go. These are like the ones we didn't print that you really have to go to the website to see it, and you can give them to your loved ones really quickly because you just print them out if you're late on your Valentine deals.
Thank you.
Valentine, I think you're riveting. There we have a little frog. So, I also wanted to mention that there was a letter that came in to the council and the mayor from the Environmental Commission of Caldwell calling for the preservation of the forest. Now, if you asked me to drive to Caldwell, I wouldn't really know where to go. I'd really have to GPS it, but they share our aquifer water. And the Buried Valley aquifer stretches far and wide, and there's communities like Caldwell that understand that we need to preserve recharge areas like the forest. So that's why their Environmental Commission passed that resolution. They say, we receive our water from the artesian wells, which directly benefit from the preserved Drew Forest purification. And they also noted that Dr. Doug Talamy, who did a special video about preserving the Drew Forest, has made 3 appearances in Caldwell. Madison has had 2 appearances because we did a noon Zoom for Borough employees, and I encourage you all to look on the YouTube channel, watch that video. It's really good. 14 towns attended. That's the end of it, basically. But I want to point out that they've had 3 visits from Dr. Talamy, so we're behind.
Very much, Claire.
Bruce Heswig, 28 Bedford Court, Madison. Do I need to sign again, or is it sufficient? The earlier discussion included questions, which I wanted to state on the record do have some answers that I understand, and I wanted to say those. There were questions about, for example, resilience. To me, resilience means the ability to tolerate extreme events with minimal damage. So in Madison, if we were to have damage from weather events, we would regret that. We would like to make it so that we have good climate change policies to minimize the possibility of extreme events and minimize the damage to the community. So for example, on the coast of Florida, there is a risk that rising sea levels will cause impacts on coastal communities. That causes increases in insurance rates. That's the kind of significance of resilience. It's related to sustainability. In Madison, as Claire just mentioned, we have an aquifer that we draw our water from. Florham Park permitted a whole bunch of development, and the licenses for withdrawing water from the aquifer were associated with wells that were overspecified. So the net effect of the permitting that was done was that the communities are allowed to draw more water because of the wells than the communities really should be allowed to draw, since that will reduce the water supply. We need to make planning in Madison climate sensitive so that we are sensitive to the issue of recharge of the aquifer, and that will permit us to sustain drinking from the waters, from the aquifer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Mr. Grimes, we have the wireless for, wait.
Stand up? Yep, thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Edward Lefty Grimes. I'm with SativaCross.org. We're a 501c3 here in New Jersey fighting for access for disabled people and for cannabis patients' rights. Last week, for my birthday, I went to go see Captain Kirk. He was in Englewood and came to town. 91 years old. You're a cool guy. And I went to go talk to him about the Kobayashi Maru. If you watch The Wrath of Khan, the Kobayashi Maru is an unwinnable situation. Unwinnable. There's no way to win it. But Captain Kirk reprogrammed the simulator to get it to work, to win. And that's what disabled people face in New Jersey. It's an unwinnable situation. No matter what we do, we're fought against. We just went to Englewood. I set up a wheelchair ramp at the post office, and we were written up for filming the inflatable ramp. They didn't film they didn't write up the human rights violation. They wrote us up for filming the human rights violation. And that's the kind of institutional ableism I'm talking about. I'm so glad to see you took some steps here. 3 of the 6 things I came to talk about seem to be addressed. The front door, the wheelchair access, it's been broken for a long time. I'm glad there's finally some traction being fixed with that. That's a huge engine that has to be repaired. I'm not sure that can fix that door. When I first parked here, you got 4 parking spots for disabled people out there, and I took up a spot that's blocking in 2 people, because there's people parked next to the driveway here, the parking garage. Those doors don't open. I don't believe they open, but me parking there, I'm stressed because now who gets towed? Do I get towed for blocking those people in? And they're city workers who are probably here today, I don't know. But there's people that I'm blocking in, that I'm stressed out that they're going to hit my car. I had to take pictures of everyone there because if my car is damaged, now I got to take pictures of whoever was there. And this is what disabled people go through because there's no thought put into that. No thought put into that at all. You got 4 spots there. If they're all taken up, who are we blocking in? Everybody. They're all blocked in. So that's something you have to think about. And I tell everybody, spend a day in a wheelchair and you'll see. The other thing was taping this thing now, a 20-piece of tape saved you guys a $20,000 lawsuit because this is a tripping hazard here. This is a big deal. You don't realize this till you're in a situation where you have to deal with this kind of stuff. The fact that there's this place here for a wheelchair to sit, I appreciate that. You're not telling me to go to the back of the room. Guys, I'm not Rosa Parks. I'm not going to the back of the room. I'm going right in the front, right in the front where I can see everybody and hear everybody. So I appreciate that. There's another thing that you dealt with. For years, there's 2 things you didn't deal with. For years, disabled people have been asking for online school, online counsel, online church, online everything, and you gave it to healthy people for 19 months. And whether or not you gave disabled people those rights and accesses,
1 minute.
You took it away. And I don't know who your attorney is this week, but the other attorney should have stopped this process from happening without Title II of the ADA being applied. Title II of the ADA says that you must have a question and answer period before you make any changes to disability rights, a transition period, a grievance procedure. Your ADA coordinator would have to be involved in all this stuff. None of that was involved, none of that happened here. And the fact that you took away cannabis for disabled vets in this town. And some of the residents here think they can wheel themselves 8 miles to Morristown, which is absurd. You're asking a disabled vet or someone with cancer or MS or palsy to wheel themselves 8 miles to Morristown. I thought I heard it all. But like I said, spend a day in a wheelchair and imagine yourself with cancer. You're not going to go, I don't think they can make a half a mile. And you're asking disabled people to go all this time. So let me just say one thing. 68% of Jesus' miracles were for the disabled. Cool Bible quote. 68% of Jesus' miracles were for the disabled.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimes. I appreciate that you've noticed the changes we've made and
thank you. Yes.
Continue to work to remove the barriers. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward.
Hi. Mary Wilson, 27 Sherwood Ave. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new chair of the Republican Committee here in town. Just this past week, I came across an article in the Daily Record entitled, "Mayor and Entire Council Change Party Affiliation from Democrats to GOP in East Hanover." It struck me. I understand the temptation to switch parties because Republicans really are a welcoming and fun group. So standing in front of a great Republican president, President Lincoln, I'd like to attempt to ask you all to flip your seats to the Republican Party. Republicans stand for the following. We want smaller government with less regulation. We want lower taxes. We want less federal intervention in the economy. We believe in protecting constitutionally guaranteed freedoms. We want a strong national defense. Republicans also believe that we, the people, can be trusted to make wise decisions for ourselves and the community. In other words, we want more power and money in the hands of citizens to make smart choices. And I think if you switched parties, that would free up a lot of your time. I hope it's clear I'm being cheeky with my request. I don't expect you to become Republican, but I had to ask. I also want to say, I know we all love this town and want the best for Madison and its residents. I'm grateful to you all for volunteering so much of your time. I'm not on social media, so I'm always up for a cordial conversation in person, and I'm happy to buy any of you a cup of tea and sit down for a nice have-you-considered discussion from a different perspective. Working through differences isn't easy, but the Republican Committee is here to help if ever needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else wishing to comment?
Kathy Daly, West End Avenue. That's a tough act to follow, and I have to say it. I think it's a great idea. I think you should consider that. I had a question. I know generally we don't have a back and forth, but just in general, I saw when we were flipping through the budget, Jim, and Mayor, 5 Geralda Avenue is like $1 million in property tax revenue. Is that property tax revenue, or is it just all their taxes? Because in looking at the line on the budget, 16 million is the total. That's the total municipal tax levy for property taxes.
That's total property taxes, including county and...
So 74 million?
The 74 million.
74 million is the total property tax that we collect. The largest one, Geralda, the AbbVie building, now Bristol Myers Squibb, is the one that pays over $1 million in property taxes. That's over $1 million in total property taxes, most of it going to the school board, and then a good chunk going to the county, and then we get 20% of that.
So just to be clear for everybody who's been listening and watching, the 16 million in property tax revenue represents the municipal portion of the tax revenue from the taxes that are paid by the taxpayers.
So we'll
Getting that right?
We'll clarify if you have any other comments. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to make a comment about the climate action recommendations that you're going to be considering tonight. One thing that struck me in the recommendations is that there doesn't seem to be any flexibility regarding cost. So these recommendations, the way that we're talking about them, kind of the way they were presented, makes it seem like everything would be irrespective of cost. Whether you're talking about the EV vehicles being added into the municipal fleet, or the green building policy for new borough projects, is this truly going to be irrespective of cost? As you're doing the RFPs for these things, I ask you to consider that as you do the RFPs. Because as demand for these kinds of technologies and solutions increases, if the supply isn't able to keep up, there could be supply chain issues, right? So costs might wind up being more than we can bear, or the wait for the equipment might be longer than is safe for the borough to do on behalf of the residents, depending on what it is it's contemplated to be purchased. A particular solution may actually perhaps cost far more than we should spend as good stewards of the financial resources of our borough taxpayers. So what I ask is, as you consider implementing these, don't tie your own hands. Don't set these recommendations and resolutions in stone. Let's keep writing this plan in pencil so that we can be flexible and erase and rewrite according to the best interests of the borough residents and taxpayers, including the best financial interests. That's it. That's all I had. Thank you for your time.
Michael Martinez, 5 Independence Court, half asleep, so I apologize. And I should be at CVS buying a Valentine's Day card. And that's probably not going to happen now. So I got two things, one lighthearted, one pretty serious. So the first one, can you please consider adding a pedestrian crosswalk on Main Street between Staples and Burger King? It's like a 2,000-foot span between Seaman and Division, or Seaman and Brook Lake. It's 35 miles per hour there. I do it several times a week, going to karate with my kid, going to the Del Barton Park. Mayor, I've heard you talk a lot about, the fact that you're so proud of this being a walking town. There's a lot of reasons to cross Main Street there. There's, again, Staples, Burger King, the new Starbucks is coming, strikes, neighborhoods, parks. So anyway, please consider that. I think it's something that a lot of folks in that area of town would really appreciate. The second thing is more serious, is on the police department. So I was here in September, you might recall. I talked about the auto theft crisis, my personal experience. Since then, we've been pretty lucky in Madison, I think, since September. But I'm still, of the view that this will worsen until, frankly, blood is shed. Just look what's happening just around us. In Verona, not too long ago, perpetrators took a stolen car. They drove it over a retaining wall into a residential driveway 20 feet below. In Morris Township a couple weeks ago, a person was arrested at 3 p.m. during the day with a minor in the house, a person that was arrested 2 times before in the prior 2 years for similar crimes. And then, of course, there was the very well-documented situation in Roseland where, similar to my situation, people came down the driveway, the cars were locked, they went into the house to get the key fob. This time, though, the resident was there with a firearm, legally registered firearm, and opened fire on the person. So, my point of saying all this is that this is, still pretty serious business. And, as much as you guys have put a lot of, thoughtful energy into a lot of different things, I respectfully ask that you continue to keep your eye on the ball on this one. We can't be complacent, and that kind of gets me to my last thing, which is, it's pretty relevant in the topic of funding. So the police department, they're both our first and our last line of defense when situations like this happen. You need them visible at nighttime to prevent crime before it starts, and then God forbid, when something happens, you need them nearby to protect and catch the perps. In my situation, I called them 2 minutes after they arrived, police arrived 2 minutes later, and by that time, they're already in Chatham going to another house. So you need them around, you need them close by. I was here when Police Chief Mishia presented the department's plan, and I think the work and the leadership they're doing in the region is really impressive. But again, as I said in September, numbers really don't lie. And as much as the police department is...
1 minute.
Yeah. And as much as the police department is one of the highest funded areas of the budget outside of public education, we have a very small police department. It's 30% smaller than our closest peers on a per capita basis. I was just looking at a website literally just now, 25th percentile in terms of overall police officers. So again, just a respectful, ask that you all, as you're going through funding, as you're going through other initiatives, I think the police department needs more folks over there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll comment on some of those in just a second. Anyone else wishing to comment?
Suzanne Schreiber, Greenwich Court. I just had a couple of quick questions. What is the current occupancy rate of Giralda Farms? And what's the percentage of Giralda Farms that is looking at tax appeals? And also, regarding the carports, I understood that nothing was going to happen or there wasn't going to be put out to bid until the federal funding was assured of, and it sounded like it was going to go out to bid, so I just wondered, is the federal funding confirmed and what level did it come in at? Thank you.
Any other comments? We'll take... Seeing none, it closes part of the meeting. We'll work back on some of these questions. Jim, on the funding for carports?
We're still working that, so we're not advancing that project until we get a better understanding. We've been talking to attorneys with American Public Power Association, which is a national organization, and with a national solar organization to get an understanding. And we're actually going to be reaching out to folks actually at the Treasury and IRS Department to get some clarification on that. So we're not going to be advancing that to bid until we have a better understanding, but we're still continuing to work on it in hopes that we get a good answer, we'll be ready to go.
And we also, in our trip to DC to welcome Lincoln, we also, as I mentioned before, had gone to Mikey Sherrill's office and also talked about them putting some pressure on the IRS and others to give us the guidelines on the spending. So we're continuing to work on that. Giralda Farms, as Jim quickly hit on, you've got Giralda 7, which is at the corner of Lewanika and Woodland, is close to 100%, and then the other extreme is Giralda 1, which is the Giralda 3 rather, which is the old Quest building, which has been empty since Quest moved out. So it's, the idea that these will come back to full office is why may not be realistic. It's all right. Everyone knows who you are now, so we can go without the name tag. So so that's why the planning board is looking at options for those sites. And just to thank you, Len. And just to reinforce the exposure.
Thanks.
Let's use the exercise of, let's say there's a tax appeal and their taxes, and we had to pay retroactively. Let's say their tax appeal, they win $100,000. When we collected that $100,000, $80,000 of it went out. It went to the school district and to the county. When we have to refund that $100,000, none of it comes back from those locations. The full 100 comes out of the borough, which is something towns have been fighting in New Jersey for quite a while, but that's one of the challenges. And so that's why we're looking at making sure Giralda Farms, which is one of the most amazing office parks in the state, is viable and evolves with the times. Questions about the crosswalk at Staples. We have had conversations with DOT. That is 124 Main Street, Madison Avenue was a state highway. Mid-block, which is any crosswalk that is not at a intersection, are very difficult for DOT to approve, mid-block crosswalks. So we will continue to have this conversation, but I can tell you that the flashing light and the crosswalk at the junior school took us a long time, and that was in front of a school. We certainly are mindful. Rachel mentioned complete streets. We have a very strong committee and expanding it to green streets, but we don't concede everything to the state. One of the recent victories we had is that if you've noticed in downtown now, during daytime hours, that all the walk signals come on automatically without hitting the button. It drove me crazy that people had to hit the button, or they had to race to get to the button during the cycle. So we're continuing. We're trying to get a full pedestrian cycle at Waverly and Central, so we'll continue to work on that. In the car theft area, yes, right now it's been quiet, but that's certainly no time to assume it's gone away. It's a time to plan for more. Our police chief continues to work with the neighboring communities and making sure there's a concerted effort. This was another topic we discussed with Mikey Sherrill's office about the federal funding to take care of license plate readers and anything that will help support the battle against this. I mentioned earlier that I serve on the Conference of Mayors as a vice president. Another role I have is on the legislative committee for the League of Municipalities. And we met this past week, and I was not able to get to the meeting because I was in D.C., but I gave my feedback on, I think, at least 5 bills that are going to the legislature to address the car theft issues. And so the state is certainly working on that, and I was supportive of all those to make sure they move forward, which includes stiffer penalties. One of the interesting things, for example, is there's a threshold at $75,000 that it becomes a higher crime at $75,000. It's very interesting that if you steal 2 $37,500 cars, you don't break the threshold right now. And so it's like a reset. No, that doesn't make any sense. So bills like that will address that people that are serial thieves, and those that are encouraging it, those that are profiting it, will all pay the price. So those are all in process. So thank you for all the comments tonight. And we now move on to the introduction of ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for first reading, have a hearing date set for February the 27th, 2023, will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 15-2023.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison supplementing Article 195 of the Borough Code to establish a municipal rental rehabilitation program.
Mayor, I move ordinance 15-2023.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold Putis.
Yes. Ordinance 16-2023.
Ordinance the Borough of Madison adopting an amended redevelopment plan in accordance with NJSA 40:12-7.
Mayor, I move ordinance 16-2023.
Mayor, I second that ordinance.
Council discussion?
So, Mayor, this is the commercial space in front of Rose Hall, correct? So they're just allowing other uses so that they can potentially find a tenant. And the impact on parking is going to be similar to what it could have been.
Could have been
potentially if it was a restaurant.
Could be a restaurant.
Sure. So they're not really asking, are they asking for that, or is it the borough that finally said,
It was Borough,
let's make a
the
change?
planning board, in recognizing that this space has sat vacant since it opened up.
Right.
And it's not integral to the downtown. It's separated from the central business district, so to require retail or a restaurant wouldn't make sense to expand it. One of the things that did come up in the planning board is we need to be mindful of the overall look of the building, that we wouldn't want to see it be bricked up because it's a professional office, that they need to, keep it looking like a retail space.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Just the other clarification there is, this would just permit the use. Any applicant who would come in would potentially need to come before the planning board for all those details, like, facade changes, parking impacts, all that sort of thing. So this would just be the ability to start the ball rolling for that and make it a little bit of a smoother transition for that use.
And with the approval of this, that goes back to the planning board, they have to address it to see if it's consistent with the master plan, which came from the planning board. That's changed too. We'll be back here again. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold-Lapudis?
Yes.
Ordinance 17-2023.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $40,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the Memorial Park Trail Improvements Phase 1.
Mayor, I move ordinance 17-2023.
Second.
Council discussion. Again, this additional funding for the trail improvements. Okay, roll call.
So how come, Mayor, this is not coming from open space funds?
Correct. We have the flexibility. It certainly is
I know that.
justified from
Sure.
general capital, and we've got commitments, open space otherwise, so
Pickle,
just want to be general capital.
pickleball.
I'll just add one other comment. Even though the value is the same as the money set aside for the emergency repair of the footbridge, this is for the trail reconstruction project, which will address an item that we've, gotten over the years. Several folks have complained about the state of the trails in Memorial Park, tree roots and overall lack of accessibility and safety with those trails. So this is an excellent project that's going to create like a gravel sand mixture for those trails, including some boardwalk in wet areas. So I'm glad that we had a successful bid opening and looking forward to this project going forward.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold-Lapudis?
Yes.
Ordinance 18-2023.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $125,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2023 Accessible Playground Project at Dodge Field.
Mayor, I move ordinance 18-2023.
Second.
Council discussion. We've had an update on the playground recently, and this is the additional funding. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold-Lapudis?
Yes.
We'll move on to consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the
Consent.
statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move consent agenda resolution 63-2023, 86-2023.
A second?
Hey, any discussion or any that need to be pulled?
I just have a couple comments and a few that I want to clarify. R63-2023, resolution of the Borough of Madison adopting climate goals for 2023. I know there was a little bit of confusion perhaps tonight because tonight we presented recommendations. This resolution is to adopt the 12 climate goals that were presented on January 23rd, 8 energy goals and 4 resiliency goals. So this resolution addresses the report presented at the last session. We are not adopting recommendations that were presented tonight, just to clarify. That will be done in the future. I want to point out that Resolution 71-2023 is a grant agreement between the Borough and the DEP for this grant it pays to plug in. This is a EV charging grant. This is for a fast charger. This is the kind of thing you see like the Tesla superchargers. It's really exciting that Madison is going to have its first level 2 fast charger in town. We are very fortunate to get this grant, and it will really propel us forward in terms of the kind of EVs we can support in town for our municipal fleet and for residents and visitors who want to charge at a fast charger in town. So it was a great win for Madison, and it'll be exciting to have this installed. And this is, it's quite a lot of money. This is up to $200,000 grant that we're receiving, so a great win. And the last one I want to highlight is Resolution 84. This is regarding the EV Expo that's going to be held on Kings Road in April. There is a huge roster of dealers that are going to be bringing their new EV models to that show. The road will be closed for part of the day in order to have a capacity to show the number of vehicles that are going to be here, which has increased significantly from previous EV expos, for those of you that have attended. Rutgers is bringing their solar-powered electric race car up. It's a demonstration car. It's very cool. So this is going to be a great event. The fact that it's overflowing the Sunday Motor Co. parking lot is a testament to the growing popularity of EVs across all makes and models. And I hope people come out. We'll have more announcements about it when the event comes closer. That's all.
Thank you for the background on it. Very helpful. Any other comments or anything need to be pulled?
So, Mayor, 85-2023 for the purchase of the accessible playground equipment from the Ben Schaefer Company. Maybe this was done already and I didn't hear about it, but are we going to reach out to the community for sponsorships or anybody that wants to make donations to the facility? Because when we did it 20 years ago, there was a lot of donations. There's a rock there that has a plaque with a lot of donors. Do we want to try and raise some funds in addition to what the borough, or in lieu of what the borough is going to spend?
We have some grants coming in, but we have not not got out as a...
We did that before, though. You were still on council then. All right, so a suggestion. Maybe it's too late. I don't know.
Good. Any other...
I want a sandbox. I'll pay for the sandbox.
And Tom, you'll abstain from R73.
Yes. Oh, yes, sir. Sorry. So I have to say that?
Just when it comes to...
Oh, okay. When the vote. Gotcha.
All right, any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harlan Putis?
Yes, except I abstain from 73-2023. Resolution 73-2023.
Thank you. Now we move on to unfinished business, but there is none, so we will vouch. Please read the voucher.
For the current fund, $296,498.86. From the general capital fund, $179,555.67. The electric operating fund, $340,483.82. From the electric capital fund, $31,317.19. From the water operating fund, $63,914.78. And from the trust, $32,302.25. The total is $962,072.57.
Mayor, I move the budget, approval of the vouchers.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harlan Putis?
Yes.
And under new business, I'd like to announce the following appointments not needing council approval. And this is Environmental Commission as associate members, one-year term through December 31st, 2023, Katie Dunnigan and Trina Malik. And I'd also like to make the following appointments, request council confirmation. Sustainable Madison Advisory Committee, Board of Ed Representative Grace Kim, and Complete Streets Committee as the Sustainable Madison Rep, Kathy Kakaval.
Mayor, I move the approval of the appointments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Tom, motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn, Mayor. Thanks very much.
Aye.
Thank you all. And thank everyone
Thanks,
coming
everybody.
tonight and patience.